Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 92 of Podcast vs. Enemies, a Destiny Massive Breakdown show. We hope you have had a good festive season and a happy new year, whatever you've been up to. We're back with some classic weapon breakdowns as we tick off Season 23 topics to break down. This week I'm joined by Impetus. Saint is finishing off his extended festive break and will be back next week. Let's get this year and this week's show on the road. Impetus, how have you been doing? And what have you been up to?
I am doing well, thank you for asking. And I've been up to travel and a little bit of Destiny, various activities. I have run the Star-Crossed exotic mission for the exotic Strandbow Wishkeeper and a few of its upgrades and catalysts. Really enjoy the Black Garden playspace, very beautiful. And the mission, it turned out to be pretty simple mechanically, but I'm not complaining about that. In fact, I do appreciate the shorter length, which I think is owed in part to the simpler mechanics, and also the fact that this mission is not located in a seasonal activity. It's its own thing. That is awesome. I've also been finalizing some details on the Strand Karnstein armlets build that I first mentioned during our Warlord's Ruin episode, and I hope to put up that build on DMB sometime this week. But how are you doing, Court?
Yeah, doing well. I feel like the festive season has both been extremely quick and also dragged on forever. Just a lot of traveling, a lot of food, a lot of friends and family, all the usual jazz. Now that's all over. Back to the thick of it, I suppose, with Destiny and some other games. Speaking of other games, I've been doing some EU4 and Last of Us Part 1 on PC, just during the days that I've not been playing Destiny. Within Destiny, I've been doing some. I did manage to get Buried Bloodline. It was actually a few days after our last recording, so we were supposed to do, or I should say, Impetus and Saint were supposed to do a episode last week, but plans all kind of went to went by the wayside, but that's fine. We're back this week. But yeah, Buried Bloodline, got that a few days ago. I got the Catalyst. I should say I got the Catalyst a few days ago as well. I'm going to check out some builds and share soon. I've been looking at Stasis, Hunter, Shatter Dive is what I'm kind of going for. Might kind of be something that we'll talk about later in the episode as well. But Buried Bloodline, very interesting exotic. Seeing Devourer on other classes is very, very strange. Been using a lot of Fireteam Finder just to kind of search out for some Warlord and Grandmaster groups. Got to say, it's very comprehensive and robust LFG. I'm really happy to see it in the game, even though it's not something that I'm going to be planning to use a lot, just because, DMB, quite a sizable community. I've got my own kind of regular players to join me for Warlord or raids or GMs, so it's certainly not something that I plan to use a lot, but I'm really glad it's there. If you do see me over there, because I'll be kind of using it the next couple of weeks just to kind of see how it is for Grandmasters, for the exotic mission, just kind of get a nice kind of view of the LFG system. But yeah, if you do see me as a joiner or as a group leader, just say hello, say hey. I mainly run Hunter with the Thistle Flower, the Tartan emblem. So if you see the name Court, that will be me rocking one of my Hunter builds. And finally, just, wishing all my, or all the listeners and hosts, and of course over on my personal projects like the spreadsheets and the infographics, everyone a very best for 2024, and thank you all for another year of Podcast versus Enemies. Lots of love to you all. As we mentioned, Saint is on a little kind of extended break. He's on a surprise trip to Washington DC with his wife. He'll probably let us know how that went next week. But yeah, anything else, Impetus, before we crack on?
No, let's get into the show for the first time in a while here, and especially for 2024. We are very excited to welcome 2 new patrons to our community here. So thank you very much, Sinners Sunday and Jack Bauer Lemons, for joining the DMB patron community. We greatly appreciate your support. as the support of our sponsors. Of course, we give these folks a shout out every episode. They go above and beyond, and that is why they deserve an extra special shout out every episode. So without further ado, a thank you to A Modern Viking, Askian Monk, Bryce Aroni, Deacon, I'm K. Rose, Moonlight, and This Moment. You can send us all kinds of feedback directly to any of our socials or via the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Discord server. Positive, critical, and constructive feedback helps with the trajectory of the podcast and how we present and break down builds, activities, and much more in the PvE sandbox for all kinds of Destiny players. We also want to extend a special thanks and appreciation to everyone that supports PvE, whether that is downloading and listening to the show, discussing it on social media in our Discord server, or supporting us via Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, if you'd like to support the show, please visit DestinyMassiveBreakdowns.com and click on the link to Patreon. You'll get access to members-only channels in Discord, behind-the-scenes info like episode previews, input on the future of the show, and access to the legendary annual merch drop. All right, Court, what is the first episode of 2024 going to be about for Podcast vs. Enemies?
Well, we're finally going to talk about the Season of the Wish weapons. We've got the usual array of 6 weapons to break down. Quite a selection this time. I think the last couple of seasons we've at least been quite kind of mediocre in terms of a selection, but there are some bangers this week, so do stay tuned for that. In terms of some housekeeping and sort of podcast updates, as well as Destiny updates, we'll just do a quick rapid fire here. So scheduling, if you've been keeping track, as I already mentioned, of our schedule, we've originally planned to have an episode out last week, so the start of the new year. Just to confirm that this is actually our first episode 2024. We haven't missed anything. There's not a secret episode. There's not a missing, long-lost episode out there. As we mentioned already, Saints off this week. He'll be back next, and I'll be away in 2 weeks' time. So that'll be episode 94. In terms of Destiny updates and schedule, Grandmasters return. The Selector node returns the 9th of January, so by the time this episode comes out, of course, we have the new exotic mission. If you've been living under a rock, Starcrossed is out. Go get that Wishkeeper craftable exotic strand bow. We'll talk about it in the future. Not all the perks and catalysts are available at the moment, so it doesn't make sense for us to break it down just quite yet. And finally, if you missed it, a few days into the new year, Bungie did state that the togetherness modifier will be removed from the coil activity. So, but again, by the time this episode goes out, it'll be gone. So that's a nice little change, because that modifier, it's not great if you're doing solo stuff in that, especially. All right, so Season of the Wish weapons. I'll kick us off with the sort of origin trait here and pass you over to Impetus for our first weapon. So Dragons of Vengeance is the origin trait. The description reads here: when an ally dies or you reach a critical health, this weapon's magazine refills and it gains bonus range, charge rate, and handling. The technical details for this is for 11 seconds after an ally death or you reach critical health. That's your no shield, so when you're in the quote red bar section of your health bar. It refills your magazine from reserves. We don't have the stat numbers for range or handling. I think it's just a kind of a fairly kind of standard array. I think when it comes to origin traits, it's not going to be too massive, but probably thinking 10 or 15, kind of that realm. But we do know the charge time. It's a 5% faster charge time for those weapons that have charge time multiplier. That's 0.95x. All right, Impetus, what is our first Season of the Wish weapon?
Well, it's a weapon that many have been wishing for, I think is the simplest way to describe it. 2 years after legendary trace rifles were introduced to Destiny 2, we have finally gotten our first stasis trace rifle. Impetus is its name. It is an adaptive frame. That's the only archetype for trace rifles. And it is joining one other weapon up in the kinetic slot. That is our first strand. Trace rifle, legendary trace rifle, I should say. That would be the Trials of Osiris Incisor. So we've just got those two up at the top. We'll use that as a comparison point, but we're also going to use Akazia's Dejection, which is the Root of Nightmare Raid Solar trace rifle, and then the Path of Least Resistance, which is our last seasonal trace rifle. That's ARC, going back to season 19. All of these except for Incisor are craftable, bear in mind here. So when we talk about stats, just bear that in mind. Impetus has 70 range, that is second highest. Tied for the highest at second, with Incisor also having 70. We've got a stability of 75. It's around about the middle here. Akazia's and Incisor stand up there at 80. Handling of 50, that is the lowest of our 4 comparison points here. Akazia sits at 59 and Incisor sits at 58, so it looks like there's a gap of 8 points there. Reload of 46 is middling as well. Incisor stands at 55, Akazia's is at 53. And then the reserves, which is a very important stat here for Impetus, is middling, with Incisor coming out on top of our 4 here. So again, trials and raid traces, unsurprisingly, are stat monsters, but in general, we don't have a lot of disparity across all of the legendary trace rifles. Incisor also does have the best ammo economy, so that would make it a pretty standout pick there when we just look at the kinetic slot. But Impetus does have some pretty interesting perks, and again, is our only stasis option here. So, looking at column 1, you've got your barrels here. Again, traces have pretty high stats across the board, especially when it comes to range and stability. So, for me, I'd like to get the handling and reload speed up a little bit here where possible. Fluted barrel gives me a pretty big jump in my handling, and a little bit more on the stability front brings stability up to 80 and handling up to 65, which is quite nice here. I don't feel the need to touch range. You could do that if you want. Same thing with stability. So really, that's all I'm going for. Recoil direction is 93. Again, with such a high stability and such a nice recoil direction, I don't feel like on mouse and keyboard, which is what I play, the trace rifles are kind of hard to control. I've seen some footage of how they handle on controller. Again, I wish we had Saint here for his input on that, but for me, I don't think the recoil direction needs to be touched here. I don't actually know what the actual direction is, because I know that these all do have kind of a new standard recoil direction after that recent change that came earlier in the year to all the weapons, so I don't know which way it kicks truly, but again, on mouse and keyboard, I haven't noticed anything so severe that I feel like I need to correct it with a barrel or a counterbalance mod. Court, how do you feel, because we get trace rifles so rarely, what kind of barrels stats do you look for column 1 on legendary trace rifles?
Yeah, I was actually trying to rack my brain thinking, when was the last time I was present for a trace rifle episode? Because it must have been the Writ of Nightmares, obviously, but I can't remember what I suggested for that when it came for at least the barrel. But yeah, I think to your point about, all the trace rifles, or I should say legendary trace rifles, have pretty solid stats to boot anyway. Mm-hmm. We didn't link the recoil direction because it's pretty much all similar. It's at least 92 or above for pretty much any legendary trace rifle. But yeah, in terms of barrels, I think I would go the same, where it's either, just boosting handling or reload speed, or even just maximizing out stability, just to really, play into the whole kind of idea for trace rifles. You want to just really keep it down, focused. But, if you're using something like chambered compensator, you're not getting the full benefit of recoil direction. You're only getting that up to +7, when it would normally be, +20 or something like that for chamber.
Right.
So it's really a free pick. And with this being craftable, you can go in, if you are a controller player, go in, test some of these out, and just see what's feeling best for you. In terms of the battery, I think that is a little bit more important, though. I think, trace rifles excel at being the kind of go-to for ammo economy special weapon. So I think with this weapon, you want to exploit that. Enhanced does give you 103, and Ionize gives you +1 to that, so it's 104. But that does play a little bit well, which we'll talk about shortly. Perks. What are we thinking, Impetus, for the main perks?
Yeah, we've got some pretty outstanding options here. They really did give us some good stuff for making us sit here and wait so long for our first stasis one. We've got Overflow. Clown Cartridge, Enlightened Action, Demolitionist, all in column 3. Outstanding, really, really solid here. I was struggling when I was looking at this initially because, again, as a craftable weapon, we can get enhanced perks, and enhanced overflow and enhanced demo are two of the strongest column 3 options that we currently have, especially for special weapons in particular. Overflow giving you a ton of ammo in the mag when you do get that. I believe it goes 2.2 times when you enhance overflow there. That will increase it by just over double there. That's pretty solid. If you want to go down to ionized battery as your column 2 pick, overflow will go up to 229 with about 247 in your reserves. Pretty excellent there. And then, of course, if you want to put reserve mods on, you're going to remain at 229 with reserves, going up to, with one mod, 299. Then with 2 mods, 351, and then with 3 at 377. So that's pretty solid. Demo, of course, especially enhanced demo, very, very strong here. 10% grenade ability energy only on trace rifles. So other special weapons do grant 20%. Trace rifles are not included in that. That does not apply. So you're only getting 10%. But again, with so much ammo, that's not too bad. And with so much reserves, of course, it's more than fair for me. So I was really struggling here. In the end, I did go with enhanced overflow. I do think that's going to be a little bit better there. Anytime I pick up a special or heavy brick, which on a special weapon, that's whenever I need ammo, of course, and there is ammo out on the battlefield, I'm getting that overfill effect. It's just too strong. But I don't think I would fault anyone for going enhanced demolitionist, because that is really so solid here, and it does allow you to bypass reloading trace rifles, which is always nice. Court, what were your thoughts for column 3?
Yeah, so overflow is my pick. I think, well, demo on a lot of weapons has seen kind of a knockback since they implemented the sort of ability changes.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting as much gains compared to prior to season 23 for slower cooldown grenades. So we're talking like vortex grenade. You're not going to get as much of a gain. But I think trace rifles that do have demo, because they're quite, they've got a lot of ammo, they've got a fair kick to them in terms of damage, you can mow down as many combatants as you want, and you can pair that with something in column 4, like One for All, but probably mainly Killing Tally. Killing Tally is very fun to see, especially on a trace rifle. It makes sense on something that has sustained fire, like machine guns, but we see it here with the trace rifle. You get up to, so every stack up to 3 is 10%, so 30% at 3 times, and the buff doesn't go away. It only goes away until you stow or when you reload the weapon. So that is your go-to for just slaying out. And if you want to use that as a demo build, then there you go. That's your play. What I have I mentioned at the start of the episode here about a stasis shatter dive build. I went for overflow instead of demo. I think I didn't need to quadruple up with the amount of stasis, grenade returns. So I went for overflow for the ammo reserves, the amount of ammo you have in your backpack, and I went for headstone. Very simple perk. You spawn a crystal on the enemy death location on a precision kill. Fairly easy to do that on a trace rifle, but I'm using this as more of an auxiliary kind of role weapon rather than an ad clear. And, spawn that crystal, dart across, shatter dive to get the kind of remaining combatants, and just keep repeating that. And I've noticed with the amount of kind of grenade upkeep stuff that I have, thinking of the stasis fragment, which escapes me. I'm having a little check here. It is, firstly I use Hedrons to get that plus 60 to mobility resilience recovery for freezing, because in PvE you can freeze combatants with a nearby glacier grenade or with a headstone grenade spawning in, you can freeze. But in terms of getting your grenade back, it is completely. It's completely. Oh,
we're getting back into Destiny. It's fine.
It is shards. That's the one. I completely missed that. With that obviously being a grenade regeneration rate, it's not affected by the sort of flat gains that you get from demo. I went for that instead of using something like demo. So Whisper of Shards is what you'd be pairing that with. But I'm going to do some tweaking. Going to have a look at some other kind of things that I could pair. Even looking at the exotic sidearm from the dungeon, Buried Bloodline to kind of pair that with a kind of double special, a double special build post double special ammo drops.
That's
not
impossible.
too sure, but it seems to be working out quite fine. And again, that's why I went for something like Overflow, and then kind of getting some of the stasis reserves in there, using your Buried Bloodline to proc Devourer, and then you've got Devourer up, which also grants you Grenade. Again, it's more of a kind of lesser gain for at least for Hunters and Titans that don't have the sort of fully fledged Devourer aspect that Warlocks have. But that's what I've been going for. Do look out for that build in the future, but that's the weapon I've been using. I was kind of stuck for there was not a lot of choices that I could really use. I wanted something that has a lot of ammo economy, but I also had some kicks. So primaries were kind of out of the option, kind of out of play. I wanted to use Buried Bloodline as well, so this is where my kind of idea of using the stasis trace rifle as a kind of pseudo primary, just like prior to the special ammo economy changes, but still some tweaking to do. I did take a little bit of a break looking at builds, so I'll be looking at that once this episode goes out. But that's my kind of thought. I deconstruct is maybe something you could bring this in with, but I'm not entirely convinced about deconstruct, just because it's pretty specific to the type of combatants we have. Deconstruct's quite potent anyway. It's a 40% damage increase to constructs and vehicles. But this might be good in, say, like Proving Grounds, where there's a lot of tanks, there's a lot of vehicles around that you can exploit this. If there's strikes or activities that have got a lot of Cyclops or not Oracles, Shriekers, might be useful as well. But again, I think Deconstruct could do with a little bit of help in terms of activating on maybe other combatants. But anyway, we'll leave that for now. Damage perk, what are you thinking, Impetus? What's kind of...
I went with Killing Tally. I mean, that was just...
Thought so.
Yeah, very, very strong. And with Enhanced Overflow, you can get to that Killing Tally ×3 and just stay there for a good amount of time. So, yeah, I'd considered Headstone, but I think I'd rather just have, especially since I don't have an Incisor roll, I'd like to just have a general trace for killing in the kinetic slot, and then maybe once I get a few rolls of Incisor, I can start kind of doubling down into the elemental side of things. But for now, yeah, Enhanced Overflow, Enhanced Killing Tally is just so strong. Really, really great weapon. The wait is over. Go get that. It's craftable. Yeah, very, very solid. Great weapon chase.
Before we move on to our next weapon, I will say that Acacia's Dejection and Incisor gets Envious Assassin, which kind of has... It's got a better edge when it comes to a higher magazine gain count. A little bit more of a kind of minigame when it comes to Envious Assassin, which we'll talk about very shortly because it's applicable to the next weapon. But I think this is a really great weapon to boot, and it has Overflow, which we don't have on any other trace rifles. But just take that into consideration. If you do have a Incisor with Envious Assassin, that might be the better play when it comes to a kind of really deep ammo reserve trace rifle. And obviously Acacia's is craftable, and if you can get the adept version, you can then tweak around with that as well. But yeah, just take that into kind of consideration.
Enhanced
Still
Killing Tally
great.
also gives you a small benefit to your magazine. So there
Yes.
is that
Yep.
as well. Incisor doesn't have Enhanced Killing Tally, just has regular Killing Tally, but it did get the Envious Assassin. So they are pretty evenly matched, despite one of them coming from a very difficult playlist to get good drops. Of course, Incisor also has an Adept version, but that's not incredibly important for PvE. So yeah, it's a good competition. We've got two very, very good trace rifles in the kinetic slot at long last.
Well, speaking of really good weapons
Yes.
in the kinetic slot, perhaps one of the best weapons in terms of damage, but I'm getting way ahead of myself. It is Scatter Signal. It is a strand rapid fire fusion rifle. That's 500 base charge time. Rapid fires, of course, when the magazine is empty, you get that 20% faster reload duration multiplier. So this is our first rapid fire strand fusion rifle. It joins the illustrious Stasis Riptide in the top slot. So we're going to pair it with Riptide and Iterative Loop, which is the new Neomuna Crossbow Arc. It's in a different slot, obviously, and Riptide, which is obviously from Crucible. You can still get that. You can grab some rolls with some Crucible engrams, and it is our Stasis fusion. So range 23, which is actually, you think that's quite low, but it's actually joint highest with Loop. Stability, which is 36, it is the highest. It's joint highest for handling at 52 with Loop. The reload is 46, which is highest by Riptide at 45 and Loop at 44, so quite close. And recoil direction, again, it's the highest. Riptide's not too far behind with 53, but Loop is down there at 47.
Wow.
So yeah, like speaking of stat monsters, this to boot has some just excellent. But Loop and Riptide are best known for their fantastic sandbox utilities for Arc, obviously Volt Shot, and Stasis, obviously Chill Clip. So stats don't really come into play, really. I think, it's obviously a lot more important when it comes to PvP, but in PvE, it's all about the perks, it's all about the sandbox. But this, while this may be a strand fusion rifle, it's more kind of, people are pegging it more for a DPS backup option, which is what we're going for. So, barrels and batteries. So, if you're wanting, really, it's for the handling bonuses is what we're playing into. So Arrowhead Break gives you your plus 30 recoil direction. It really closes up the recoil, but you do get that plus 10 handling. Or you can go Fluted, which is plus 5 stability and plus 15 handling. So it really just, it's wherever you want. It's not really, I don't think it's that important to take into consideration range, just because fusion rifles aren't, a rangey weapon to begin with. So you want something to kind of swap to. Obviously, handling does affect your aiming down sight speed as well. And you do want to keep your fusion rifle quite stable when you're firing. For batteries, it's really either enhanced or ionized. Both will provide 8 magazine, and there's no disparity here. Ionized obviously gives you a slight malice when it comes to reload, but it doesn't really matter because of the way that we're going to be kind of playing into here, because we're going to be using overflow. So, Impetus, speaking about a damage fusion rifle here, what other perks? I think I've already said overflow, but is there anything else that we might suggest before we talk about the main role here?
No, I mean, this does get Slice, and Slice can be a perk to use in damage situations, but I think this perk would probably be served better on a different weapon entirely, maybe a primary in your kinetic slot or a different special weapon. I'm still trying to work on how I feel about Slice as a perk and also how I can fit it into my damage rotations. So I'm not, for me, Overflow is still the superior option for Scatter Signal, and I'm not going to go into, all the different comparisons for Slice on different special weapons in your kinetic slot, but it is a strong perk, and I did want to bring it up, but I do think Overflow just in general is the column 3 option that I'm going to go with. It's what I put on my crafted, and I think it's the one that I'd probably recommend for a general audience.
Yeah, I don't have any other suggestions here because, again, I think these fusion rifles, these elemental fusion rifles, kind of, you've got some that play into their sandbox respectively, but this is definitely your backup DPS option. So enhanced or ionized battery will give you that 8 magazine. Ionized doesn't produce more ammo for rapid fire fusion rifles, unlike some others like high impacts. The base magazine is hard capped at 8. Enhanced overflow brings that magazine size up to 16 at base with no reserve mods. I did kind of confirm this, went into the game before we started just to kind of really lock down these numbers. So again, with reserve mods, the magazine size of 18 with 1 in reserve. So when you proc overflow, you'll get 18. At 2, you've got magazine size of 18 again, and you've got 3 in reserve. And I think it's the same for 3 times. Again, like last time, with the Stasis Trace Rifle, Envious Assassin grants a larger magazine gain with reserves on, but Overflow is still a very potent perk, and it doesn't require any minigame. You just pick up a special or a heavy brick and go. There's no kind of playing around. If you see a special or a heavy brick, pick it up, and you'll pretty much have your entire ammo count into your magazine. There's no reloading required here. So we don't have any rapid fire fusions with Envious Assassin yet. Eremite and Nox Perennial both are high impacts, have Envious, with the former obviously being able to get the coveted enhanced Envious Assassin role. Fully activated Envious Assassin with Ionize, which does help on high impacts, can get up to 20 in one magazine with 3 solar reserves. So if you've been kind of around, at least in Season 23, if you've been around DPS circles, damage circles, there's been this kind of the battle of the giants, and that is this weapon, Scatter Signal, with Overflow and Controlled Burst as a damage potential versus Eremite with your Envious Assassin and Control Burst as well. It's these two giants fighting each other, and there's been kind of a lot of, a lot of it comes down to preference. I think entirely up to you which one you do. You'll do a lot of damage using either. Scatter Signal has been the rapid fire. I think that's more of the user friendly. High impacts are a lot more, take a long time to charge up, which can be pretty frustrating. But this is your damage weapon. If you swap to from your heavy weapon, say you're using Dragon's Breath to kind of load up on your stacks while you're firing with Scatter Signal or Eremite, and just go to town. This is your go-to.
Yeah, it really is a battle, because on the one hand, Eremite getting Envious Assassin, but Scatter Signal has an origin trait that will actually proc and give a noticeable benefit in the situation where you'd be using both Eremite and Scatter Signal, as Head Rush does not really give Eremite any boost whatsoever. And of course, Enhanced Controlled Burst doesn't have any measurable benefits, so that's kind of a wash there over something like Main Ingredient, for example. But then, so it really does kind of come down to Enhanced Overflow plus Dragon's Vengeance proccing versus just Enhanced Envious Assassin on a high impact, which is a little bit easier to control. So yeah, very, very close competition here. Different slots though, right? Let's keep that in mind. Not only are they different archetypes, but they're also in different slots. So that does give you some degree of freedom with what other weapons you might have in either your energy or kinetic slot that you would pair with Scatter Signal when you're going into a damage scenario here. But yeah, I mean, this is far and away the weapon to chase, of course, but Impetus is also a really great option as well. We've got, I think, compared to last season, 2 great special weapons to add to the arsenal that definitely have a place in everyone's vaults here, as opposed to really just Eremite being the standout from last season when it came to high-end PvE. So definitely go grab Scatter Signal. Yeah. Great great combos there. I do, yeah, I want to come back to Slice, but I think for now it's Overflow Control Burst by a good margin.
Yeah, in terms of masterwork, you want to go for charge time.
Yep.
We mentioned a while, or I should say a few episodes ago, that charge time no longer decreases the damage output of fusion rifles. So that will knock out 40 milliseconds. So it brings it down to 460 at base. Control burst is a 10% decreased aka faster charge time, so that brings it down to about 414. And then once you get Dragon's Vengeance, which is a further 5% charge time reduction, aka faster, it brings it down to just below 400. So you're knocking quite a substantial amount of charge time. You also have to get, one of your allies has to die, or if you reach critical health, which can be pretty risky in a lot of battles, or pretty hard if you're standing in a well. But that's quite a sizable chunk just to keep battering your whoever's in front of you with a 393.3 charge time fusion rifle, which is nuts. Just constantly firing.
Yeah, Dragon's Vengeance it's not something you want to actively go for, unless you are trying to pull off some crazy stunts here. But it lasts for 11 seconds, which is going to be a majority of your damage phase outside of doing a proper raid cycle. So I could definitely see this proccing even unintentionally on a Crota fight, like a normal Crota fight, just because of how hard that sword slam attack can be, especially if he slams out the well and brings you to critical health. So that'd be the one area where I could maybe try and go for Dragon's Vengeance deliberately and then have those benefits. But yeah, for other raid scenarios, I mean, just play it normally, play it safe, and if Dragons procs, sweet, go to town, right?
I noticed a very high benefit in the Warlord's Rune for the Ogre fight, because the Ogre does slap hard, but also there's a lot of ads that if you aren't clearing out regular, they can slap you down. So yeah, it's not something you want to really chase after, is that 5%. It's only 5%, so you're not missing a huge benefit to go from 414 to 393, but it's there. And when I was doing my solo run, I would accidentally go down to red health and pop my healing grenades and go to town with this. Pair it with, if you can get unraveling rounds as well, that's extra damage, just free damage with the unravel tech. It's just such a strong weapon, this one. I think Riptide will still be the go-to for Chill Clip, for overloads, for that stasis tech. If you like arc fusion rifles with Volt Shot, Iterative Loop is still there as well. But this is going to be our damage weapon, kind of backup damage weapon. If you're kind of loading a weapon from reserves in your backpack well stowed, this will be your go-to.
Absolutely.
You mentioned maybe another role just before we finish up here. Would you consider hatchling here as a alternate?
No, I don't. I don't think fusion rifles benefit well from hatchling. Yes, you don't have to hit a precision shot, of course, to proc the perk on a fusion rifle, but yeah, I think for me, I would stick to primary weapons for hatchling. Especially, when we have specific stuff like controlled burst in the perk pool. No point going for hatchling. Hatchlings don't deal that level of damage against boss targets for me to even consider that as an alternative. So I will keep that perk on primary weapons for now.
The only other suggestion I would say just before under over, but that's only if you're using this as a anti-champion or anti-barrier weapon, because it does affect that 125% increase to those combatant shields. You can get unraveling rounds. That's where I'm kind of going for with this being a strand weapon. That's the only other suggestion. If you want to use this as a kind of a champion killer weapon, you can go for that, or at least to bring down their shields really fast if you're not using Arbalist or Wish Ender. But yeah, beyond that, go for that overflow enhanced overflow and controlled burst roll for that amazing damage.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about that. All right, we've got another Strand special weapon here. They really just opened up the floodgates here and threw a bunch of special weapons at us in the kinetic slot, and we are here for it. This is Super Cluster, which is our Strand pinpoint slug shotgun. Of course, slug shotguns fire a single heavy-hitting slug round, and they do also come with a minus 20% recoil yaw, which translates to reduced horizontal recoil. We are going to compare this with a stasis slug weapon, No Reprieve, from Season of the Plunder, and then a kinetic slug, that's Heritage, from Deepstone Crypt Raid. Both of these comparison points are craftable here. Supercluster has a range of 65, that is in the middle here, with Heritage being above at 68. Stability of 49 on Supercluster, that is actually the highest by 6 points, surprisingly, and a handling of 71, which is also highest by 1 point. Reload speed of 45, where No Reprieve edges it out by 1 at 46, so it's in the middle there. And then a recoil direction of 59, Heritage is up at 60. So competitive stats against Heritage, which is one of the strongest slugs in the game. So we're off to a strong start here for our first pinpoint slug Strand shotgun. On our barrels and mags here, barrel-wise, you've got a naturally high handling there, all the way up at 71, so I don't think that needs to be directly touched. I would lean a little bit more towards range here. Hammerforged rifling wouldn't be a bad option there. That gets your range up to 75. You could go small bore, but that touches stability, and you don't really need stability a whole lot on slug shotguns. You've only got the one bullet there. Once you line up the shot, it's not going to throw you off too much. So I don't think 7 points of stability from small bore is really worth it. Full bore. Do we go all the way and commit to an 80 range but 39 stability and 66 handling? I might be tempted to do that. I don't think I will recommend that though for y'all. But yeah, Hammerforged I think would be kind of the option that I would recommend, and then maybe pair it with Assault Mag in column 2. Or if you wanted to round out your magazine a little bit more here, Tactical Mag or Appended Mag to give you an extra bullet there. I think those three options are pretty top tier here. We do have 2 reload perks in column 3 that does open my mind a little bit to Extended Mag. That's going to really tank that reload speed down to 25. But again, we've got 4th times the charm and reconstruction in column 3. And I should also say lead from gold too would fix that as well, where you can effectively bypass reloading. So that reload speed malice doesn't hurt quite as much there. Just another option here. I do still think I would probably recommend Assault Mag, Appended, or Tac Mag over Extended Mag, but if you do want to really lean into those column 3 options, Extended Mag isn't really going to be hurting you too much as long as 4th times or reconstruction or lead from gold are proccing consistently for you. And moving over to column 3 here, Court, I don't know. I mean, this is a tough one. This is a pretty competitive column 3 here. Slice is showing up again. Again, I still don't know, what range distance Slice is really going to be helpful for. I mean, we saw it on Scatter Signal. That's pretty close range. This is obviously going to be a very, very close range weapon with Super Cluster, running right up to an enemy, casting my class ability, and then hitting them to apply Sever. So that's the thing. I just don't know if that would be a sequence of actions that I'd want to do at a further distance than being right up close. And again, if I'm going to be trying to use this in a solo environment, I'd want to be a bit further away. But if I'm in a raid or a dungeon with other fire team members, maybe I could get away with doing a class ability closer to a target and then applying a short range debuff to them. I don't know. What are your thoughts on kind of the column 3 options here?
Well, in regards to Slice, I'm not that convinced about Slice for these close range weapons either. I think we suggested Slice for one of the sniper rifles we broke down a few episodes ago. I think that's the play. I'm thinking quite far ahead. We know Well of Radiance is going to get some sort of change. Bungie did confirm that. So I'm thinking, in a lot of content we are relatively mid-range, but a combatant does tend to move around. Thinking recently with like Crota or even Warlord's Ruin with the 3 bosses there. Am I going to exploit Slice for kind of reducing their damage down on a close range weapon? Probably not. I'm probably going to stick to a more longer range pulse rifle, scout rifle, sniper rifle. So Slice on here, not too convinced. But, we do have Lead from Gold, which is your classic picking up heavy ammo also grants ammo for this weapon. 4th times the charms here, which is great. The magazine base is at 6, so you can really exploit that quite nicely. And as you mentioned, we've also got Reconstruction. So it is fairly competitive. I just don't think Slice is really the play here. In terms of column 4, though, I think there's a lot of things here. I'm just like, no, I'm good. But I see Surrounded, and with this being craftable, you can get Enhanced Surrounded. It is a close range weapon, so you could use this in those kind of Warlord's Ruin. If you keep up some of the Acolyte Eyes or some of the Thralls that are spawning in. Crota as well, you can try and exploit that. There are places within the Crota fight or the Ute fight where you can proc Surrounded. Is it as good as a specific, or I should say 2 LFRs, heavy LFRs? We'll talk about one of them later on. Not too sure. I haven't really seen a lot of excitement when it comes to Surrounded on a shotgun. Shotguns aren't. We aren't in that meta from a few years ago where hot swapping to shotguns was the play. I've seen a few clips. People have tried to do it. It's not as terrible as some people would make it out. But I don't know if you've had any experience, Impetus, with using, say, a Surrounded 4th times the charm shotgun, which this has that.
I don't even think I've had one drop for me, so no.
Okay. Well, good thing you can craft this.
Yes, that's true.
Any other perks, though, in the 4th column?
Yeah, I put Vorpal Weapon on there, kind of just to have a standard 4th times Vorpal option, but Threat Detector Surrounded would go quite hard. I cannot deny that. Yeah, I'm looking at the enhanced perks right now, kind of judging the extra benefits there. Vorpal Weapon just gives you a stat bump to stability, which is useless, non-noticeable. 4th time becomes more forgiving. What are you thinking?
Threat Detector, Enhanced Threat Detector brings it up to 100 handling. I haven't picked any magazine or barrels, but 100 handling and 100 reload speeds. So you're kind of good there. You do obviously get that handling animation duration multiplier as well. For aiming down sight and for swapping. So yeah, Threat Detector and Surrounded would be a perfect pairing. But I think I'm still kind of focused. With this being a pinpoint slug frame, I think 4th times the charm is it's your risk reward. If you get those precision hits, then you're going to get the returns, and pair that with Surrounded. But yeah, Vorpal Weapon's a good pick. It's special weapons 15% rather than the 10% that you see on heavies, which makes it pretty next to useless when it comes to heavy weapons. But 15%, nothing to kind of shrug off. But Surrounded is there. This is your kind of high risk, high reward kind of weapon. Again, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself and talking about an LFR that we'll talk about shortly, and another LFR, which is Briar's Contempt, which has the surround role as well. But obviously, those are heavy weapons as opposed to this being a special.
Yep. Yeah, it's again a pretty solid special weapon. It's just that slug shotguns aren't in that relevant, that meta. Right now for kind of what we swap to. They're not bad. They're certainly not the worst special weapons to use, but their time has come and gone, and this would have been at one point a very, very dominant weapon a few years ago, but we're kind of in that period now where you can certainly bring it out for some things, but it's not going to shine quite like a few of the other things. It's certainly not going to shine like Scatter Signal will right now, that's for sure.
All right, let's move over to a weapon which probably the weakest out of the 6 here. We do have Lethophobia. Lethophobia is all about forgetfulness, so phobia of forgetting, if you're wondering what that is. So, bows, again, another weapon like the trace rifles is something that I have not broken down a lot recently, or something we kind of don't really talk about our bows, but yeah, I think this is our kind of the weakest out of the six. So it is our Void lightweight bow. It has a 540 draw time. With it being a lightweight, it has the bonus of let's see, I don't have the numbers here with lightweight. I should know it off by heart because we do talk about lightweight weapons quite often. Let me just have a look. Yeah, it's plus 20 mobility, and you get that 6.25% forward movement speed bonus. That is your intrinsic passive, so that's always working behind the scenes. So we're going to pair this with Tyranny of Heaven, which is from Last Wish, and Imperial Needle, which is from Season of the Chosen, quite a few seasons ago there. Range, which is 23. Which is the lowest. Tyranny has 36, stability of 56. Tyranny has 59, 62 handling, which is lowest. The other two have 68 reload, which is the same across all three. And we have a draw time of 540, which is the lowest of all lightweights because the normal draw time is 500. So for what reason, this has a slightly longer draw time compared to its peers, which is very curious to see that. I don't know if that's maybe a missight. It's just not, folks haven't saw that it's slightly higher, but who are we to know? We don't really tend to cover bows a lot when it comes to PvE unless it's an exotic bow. So yeah, it's got terrible core stats plus the worst draw time for any lightweight bow. So very curious to see that. Very strange that it's 540 on D2 Foundry, which is what we use to kind of compare with a lot of weapons. It says 612, which is wrong. It should be 540 or 500. Who knows?
Yeah, I had to go into the game and double check because I couldn't believe it when we were doing the stat comparison. I was like, no, that's 540. That is higher than every other lightweight bow in the game.
So we may want to improve that with some of our first two column perks. So we do have Elastic String, which brings it down by Foundry says minus 72. We do have Flexible String, a slight edge, but you do get that handling bonus as well. It's a higher handling bonus to Elastic. That's kind of what we're kind of going for. Is we'll pick Elastic String just to really bring down that draw time. In terms of arrow, though, I mean, what is the pick here? Impetus, I'm not sure if you're. I know we're not that big bow enthusiasts, but what would you say as an arrow pick here?
I typically go fiberglass. That, especially on this bow with that accuracy stat being so low, a plus 15 is pretty needed, and a minus stability I don't care about too much on bows in PvE. It can have some adverse effects if you really tank it in PvP, but that's not what we cover here. So for me, it's fiberglass, and then if the bow did have an okay accuracy stat, then I typically recommend compact arrow shaft for better reload and handling.
Elastic String does bring down their accuracy, so you could opt out for Polymer String, which doesn't have an accuracy malice. It has a plus 5 accuracy bonus, and you do get a slight edge in draw time. But again, with this being base 40 draw time slower than its peers, we do kind of want to really exploit that because, you could pick the higher, or I should say the faster draw time for the other weapons, which will get much higher benefit anyway. In terms of column 3 and 4, not a lot of things that are really shouting out to me. I see permeability. If you're a hunter, you can play into that kind of shtick. We have successful warm-up in column 3. I know that's quite a sought-after perk in both sandboxes. That's a 37.5% faster draw time for bows. for 6 seconds, and then kills with this perk will add 4 seconds up to a max of 20. So that's maybe what you're wanting to go for, again, with this having a slightly higher draw time. In terms of column 4, though, we're talking damage perks. I do see explosive heads there. I know that's quite another sought after perk. Surrounded, not really going to be interested in. This is a kind of longer range weapon. If you're out in the wild with a lot of enemies around you, for surrounded to proc, swap to your super cluster.
Yeah, no kidding.
Golden tricorns there. If you're wanting that really omega damage, that's 50%. This being a void weapon. Or if you want to play permeability on a hunter, you can use it as whatever you want. You can change it to be arc if you're an arc subclass, and use those potent melees or grenades. But void's pretty great as well when it comes to grenades. Beyond that, though, none of the other perks are really shouting out. Surprised to see disruption breaks here. I haven't seen that for a while. It's been some time since I've seen disruption break on a weapon. But with, again, bows tend to be quite useful when it comes to barrier champions. So if you want to play into that kind of shtick, you get that 50% kinetic damage bonus. Doesn't apply to stasis or strand weapons, though, which we've been getting quite an abundance of. Kinetics are still very useful, still pretty potent, but I don't really see much point having disruption break. Deconstruct maybe, but as I mentioned earlier on with the stasis trace rifle, you want these kind of longer range weapons to have something that can deal with, streakers, cyclopses, tanks, all that jazz. But that's why I kind of recommended Appetence to have that instead of something that fires pretty slow in the first place. So I don't really see Deconstruct being a good play here. A lot of these weapons also have attrition orbs, which we haven't mentioned, and Lithophobia is no exception, but you need 5 hits for that orb to spawn, which grants you 0.8% super energy. I don't really see much worth using attrition orbs either. Impetus, what are you feeling? What's the perk you're going to craft for this weapon for PvE?
There's a reason I put Imperial Needle in the comparison chart. This did not beat out a weapon from 2 years ago. A weapon that's not craftable, a seasonal weapon, didn't even have an origin trait. Lithophobia is kind of a disappointment on all fronts for PvE specifically. We do have Under Your Skin, which is the precision void craftable bow from... Oh gosh, from now, where does it drop? The exotic mission on Mars, whose name escapes me, I believe is the new one. Or is this? Yeah, no, this drops from that exotic mission now. Used to be Season of the Risen, but those weapons have now been moved over to... Oh, what is that one? I can't even remember it. It's been so long since I did it.
Vox Obscura.
Thank you. Yes, for the Dead Messenger exotic grenade launcher. So you can still craft it. You just need to get the red borders from that exotic mission doing that whenever that's in the exotic mission rotator. And that does get Archer's Tempo explosive head. You could kind of replicate that on Lithophobia with, say, a successful warm-up explosive head, which is what I would normally recommend. Archer's Tempo is still a better option, though, because it does not require a kill, which is what successful warm-up requires. So even then, I just don't see a huge reason to run Lithophobia. Under Your Skin, of course, has a much better origin trait in land tank. So yeah, there's nothing that makes up for the poor stats, the poor base draw time here on Lithophobia. Yes, it does get Repulsor Brace. Under Your Skin came out before we got Repulsor Brace. I'm not sure that's really a reason to run Lithophobia here, I'll be honest. It's just, this one suffered. This did not get the same level of attention that our specials did, unfortunately. The draw time is kind of the immediate no-no for me. I don't know why that shows up the way that it is. I haven't tested to see if that's an actual glitch, and its normal draw time is 500, but it just shows up as 540. I'd have to ask around on the server, but yeah, 40 extra points of draw time is an automatic disqualification for me, so I can't even recommend this. If you don't have access to any other Void bows, if you don't have Layman Arc, you don't have Under Your Skin, this is all you've got, and it's just a disappointing option. But, if you are someone listening who's in that position, successful warm-up or, I guess, enlightened action with Explosive Head is my serious recommendation. But once you get Layman Arc, you'll never go back, truthfully. So it's no point in holding on to this if you do have other Void bows. This is just kind of a infusion fuel seasonal weapon.
So I've done a real quick scuffed search in our Massive Breakdowns Discord server, and apparently, I can't confirm this just because we're obviously recording this live, but apparently the 540 is a visual bug. It should be 500 when you're actually firing it. But even outside of this being, if it is a visual bug, if it is properly 500 with its peers, to your points there, Impetus, I think this is just it's the weakest out of the 6 here. This is just not quite it. Again, much like I think with at least with snipers and even sometimes with trace rifles, even though it's not the same caliber, I think bows kind of suffer if it's not an exotic bow. Then it's just like, well, I'm not that interested in PvE. I know there's a lot of heat and excitement in the PvE sandbox. When it comes to bows, it's completely the reverse.
Very balanced weapons.
Yeah. But in PvE, you've got stuff like Under Your Skin. Yeah, that's a precision bow, but it's just such a solid weapon, even after, we're season 23 now, so that was back in season 16. Many, many years at this point. Yeah. I don't think we should talk about it much more now. We've got 2 more weapons that I think are much more sought after.
Fair enough.
What's our next one?
Yeah. Goodbye to Lethophobia. Hello to Scalar Potential. This is an arc rapid-fire pulse rifle shooting at 540 rounds per minute. Rapid-fire frame bonus here. When the magazine is empty, you do get a 0.8 times reload duration multiplier. In layman's terms, it's going to reload, 20% faster. So this is kind of an interesting one because we did get an arc rapid-fire pulse rifle last season that's also craftable and also has an adept version. That was the Oversoul Edict dropping from the Crota's End raid, so that's the most immediate comparison. And then the season before that, we did also get Outlast, which was reprised. That's a Reckoning weapon, but did come back in season 21. Outlast is solar and not craftable. So those are going to be the 2 comparisons here, but really keep in mind what Scalar Potential and Oversoul Edict have to bring to the table, as they are the exact same in their element and their frame. So jumping in here, we've got a range of 28 on Scalar Potential. That is middling. Outlast actually at the top here by 2 points at 30. Stability of 44, that is middling again. Oversoul Edict this time up at 47. 25 handling is the highest. Reload of 35, also the highest. And then recoil direction of 53 is middling. Outlast sits up there at 60. So again, we're coming hot off the heels of Oversoul Edict last season. This one, though, does have some pretty good stats, making Oversoul probably not quite as amazing to seek after. I think this will ultimately come down to personal preference as well. Scalar Potential does have a much clearer scope aesthetic compared to Oversoul. You don't have to worry about all of the hive bits and blobs taking up most of that weapon model in ADS. And Scalar Potential does have the same model in sight as Cold Denial from all the way back in Season of Arrivals, which is very clean. So when you do aim down sights with this, I think you will have a much better sight picture, which definitely matters a lot in PvP, but also does have quite a big effect in PvE as well. So bear that in mind as we start talking about the columns here. Jumping into column 1, stability is going to be the highest stat here on our rapid fires, so I don't think that necessarily needs to get touched. Kind of my opinion here is if the stability is enough of an issue for you, you should probably swap to a different archetype. Truthfully, we do have tons and tons of pulse rifles. They are the most frequent. We do have the most crafting patterns for pulse rifles. There's just plenty of options season over season. So I don't think you need to suffer too much in trying to make a rapid fire frame work for you. Just swap to a different archetype if the stability is an issue. What I definitely want to work on here would be range and or handling. So for me, it's going to be fluted barrel and then ideally hammerforged rifling here would be kind of the two that I really care about. Recoil direction of 53, that may be not enough for you. You could go arrowhead break, that brings it up to 83, also does help out your handling a good bit, brings that up to 35 there. I don't think that would be a bad option either. Looking at column 2 here, I'm probably going to recommend magazine perks. I think Tactical Mag is just such a safe pick there. Gives you a little bit of a bump to stability, which again, we don't need, but it's not hurting anything, of course, and does give you a boost to your magazine. Don't go extended mag here. Appended mag is not huge in the benefits that it brings to this weapon as a total. If you wanted to go flared magwell for a even faster reload speed, that is an option, but for me, Tac Mag far and away is the best here. Moving on to columns 3 and 4, we do have some very interesting options. Column 3, permeability. Again, Court always mentions that for the hunters. That's just because your class ability charge rate is so much so much lower compared to the charge times for Warlock and Titan class abilities. So hunters get to take advantage of permeability far more frequently, so that's a great option there. We do have overflow again. I think we've already sung its praises plenty of times on the special weapons, so you know how we feel about overflow and enhanced overflow. Enlightened action, again, another solid weapon here. Keep away, not bad at all here. That's going to help out with the range a little bit and also really help out with reload speed. Take that all the way up to 65. That could be a really solid perk there. I think for PvE, I might give it to Enlightened Action here. Going all the way up to 5 stacks, that's going to bring reload speed up to 85, which is really nice. But more importantly for me, it takes my handling all the way up to 75, so it's going to feel quite snappy there, and that is very important to me. So that's the number one option here. I'm not too fussed with overflow on a primary weapon. It can be certainly nice, but again, with rapid fire is already helping me out a little bit with a slightly faster reload when the magazine is empty. And then something that like Enlightened Action, nearly maxing out my reload speed. I'm good on having or giving up extra bullets in my mag for just very, very, very quick reload speeds. Court, do you have anything in column 3 that you'd like to add?
No, I think Enlightened Action's to play here. I was kind of looking at Keep Away, because you do get that nice little bonus, 30 reload speed plus range. But I think Enlightened Action, you just use the weapon and you're going to get bonuses. That's pretty much it. Deal damage, to say, with this weapon. You're getting improved reload speed and the handling. In terms of column 4, though, I think that's where, I mean, this is a great pulse rifle. It looks great to look at and to look through the sights. It's not as busy compared to Oversoul Edict, but I think what really, in PvE, in PvP, this is the go-to, but in PvE, I think this is where it kind of falls apart a little bit. At least if you're not really enthused about permeability, like I am going to suggest with Golden Tricorn, you can use this for any element and play into that. I am a big Golden Tricorn stan, as I always say, but the other perks are just not quite there. Impetus, outside of Golden Tricorn, what else would you suggest?
I mean, goodness sakes, not a whole lot. You do have Focused Fury. I think that can be not a great option on weapons with larger magazines. We're sitting at 35 bullets in the magazine here. You need to get half of those as headshots for this damage perk to proc, but it's a rapid fire, so you're going to be firing at a pretty quick pace here. I think you need to have some pretty solid aim. You also can't be taking too much damage that would be flinching your shots while you're trying to proc Focus Fury, so that right there is a lot of stars to align in just general gameplay in PvE, especially in-game PvE. So I really don't think there's anything worthwhile here. You do have under-over, again, there's the barrier element there, but that's not really that's not enough for me, especially in column 4 on a primary weapon, to strongly consider it here. Deconstruct is kind of the same situation, just a little too niche for my liking. So it really does come down to Golden Tricorn, which is an excellent damage perk, but just that one perk in column 4. Whereas Oversoul Edict has far more options. You've got Swashbuckler, which ties into Oversoul Edict's Cursed Thrall origin trait. You've got Adrenaline Junkie in column 4. Bear in mind, Oversoul Edict has Demolitionist in column 3, so that has synergy. You've got Sword Logic, which is the unique Crota Raid perk, which is very, very nice. And then most importantly, Volt Shot in column 4, which is not present on Scalar Potential. So you're having to make a choice here. I think for players that can't get into Crota's End, Scalar Potential is probably going to be the arc pulse of choice here, but it's really just going to be Golden Tricorn is what you got in column 4. If you do have access to Crota's End, again, you've got a stronger perk pool, I think, on Oversoul Edict, but you do have to get past the weapon model, which is not everyone's cup of tea, and I don't think I would fault anyone for going to Scalar Potential for PvE, even if they did have access to Oversoul Edict, just for that model site.
Cool. Yeah. Don't get us wrong. I think this is a fine pulse rifle. To your point there, Impetus, if you're not that into raiding, then the only other option you have that has an arc pulse rifle that's a rapid fire, at least, is Pilotactic Spiral?
Philotactic Spiral?
Yeah, Spiral, yeah. I was looking at Psi Hermetic, I'm like, no, that's a kinetic. That's your only other option, but that's not craftable. Sorry, no, that is one of the craftable weapons, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard to get though, still, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to get, but it's not like as a solo player, you can go and just kind of pseudo farm it. I should say that's a high impact as well, not a rapid fire. That's the only other option to have a volt shot weapon. And obviously they did remove the volt shot scalars when it comes to the different types of weapons that can apply it. So it's all just doing pretty much the same damage. But yeah, to my point and to your point there, Impetus, that this doesn't roll volt shot, which would have been a really great play. But I think with this being pretty much 3 months after Crota's End, it would be really rubbing up against what should be a sought after perk. But Fireteam Finder is a thing in the game. A lot of folks will be running the most recent raid, which is Crota's End. So if you are after something which is pretty decent in PvE for applying Volt Shot or any other perks, Demo and Adrenaline Junkie, then go and get your Oversoul Edict. All right. We've got our last weapon here, which is pretty interesting. It's been making some waves just like Scatter Signal. This is a very interesting one. So this is Doomed Petitioner. Very, very cool name, to be honest. It is our Void Aggressive linear fusion rifle. That's a 5.33 charge time. And reminder, LFR aggressives fire a 3-round burst at the expense of 1 ammo. So think of like a pulse rifle, but it's just at the expense of 1 ammo. So we're going to be comparing it with Briar's Contempt, which is from Root of Nightmares. That's our solar option. And also Fire and Forget, which is the last seasonal aggressive LFR that we could craft. And that was way back in season 19. And that's Stasis. Range of 45, which is middling. I'm going to be noticing a trend here. Briar's is higher at 51. Stability of 46. Briar's is 47. 25 handling, which is actually the lowest. Briar's is at 31. Fire and Forget is 27. Reload of 24. Briar's at 25, and recoil direction is at 71, which is actually the lowest compared to the other two. Fire and Forget is actually higher at 75, and Briar's is at 74. A quick little kind of section here in regards to magazine sizes. So all are at 5 at base, but when you start combining it with certain batteries, it'll go as the following. So with Enhanced Battery, you'll get 5 with Doomed, 5 with Fire and Forget, and 6 with Briars. So yes, you're not mishearing. You are going to get a slight edge when using Enhanced Battery compared with Briar's Contempt compared to this weapon and Fire and Forget. Ionized, it's a little bit different. It should be 6 for all three, Doom, Briar's, and Fire. All three get that 6 magazine. When you're starting to pair it with other magazine perks like Field Prep, you've got Backup Mag mod, you've got Adept Mag mod. They can go up to 7 when combined with some of the battery mags, so thinking Enhanced and Ionized. But at this stage, we're not going to recommend any of them as mods to equip on, at least on Doomed Petitioner. It doesn't make it much of a high enough bonus versus just using spec mods for damage purposes. But it is important just to take in consideration when it comes to the battery perks. Of course, Doomed isn't as stacked as Briar's, obviously with it being a raid weapon, but it does hold its own compared to Fire and Forget, and it also has some very potent perks to pick and choose. So let's take a look here. Now, the way we're kind of looking at this, it's going to be another damage type LFR, as with any heavy LFR they are, but this one specifically related to a few perks that we're going to be pairing it with. So when it comes to barrels, looking at chambered to kind of really lock down the stability and the recoil direction, it really brings the cone for recoil direction to a much tighter frame. You do miss out on a little bit of handling. For batteries, as I already mentioned, if you want 5 in your magazine, you're going for Enhanced, but you'd probably want to go for Ionized, and that's where you get your 6. When it comes to the perks, we are going to, or I should say, I'm going to suggest Envious Assassin, as for reasons we already talked about when it came to Scatter Signal. Envious Assassin, a little bit of a minigame here, a little bit of busy work for it to proc, but you're going to get a much higher magazine count compared to Reconstruction, which also rolls on this. It doesn't roll Overflow, but that's your 2 magazine directly improving perks there. And for column 4, we do have Surrounded, we've got Golden Tricorn, and we've got Precision Instrument. It's Surrounded and Precision Instrument that I'm most interested in. And this is another kind of battle of the titans, because Briar's Contempt also rolls Surrounded. I think Briar's Contempt does Surrounded better than this weapon, for the reasons I mentioned earlier on regarding Enhanced Battery, but also for these reasons. So with Ionized Battery on Doom Petitioner, you get 6 magazine, as I've already said. Enhanced Envious Assassin brings the magazine size at base to 18, with 1 in the reserve, and with the other reserve mods, you get magazine size of 18, 2 in reserve at 1 mod, 2 mods, it's 18 mag size with 4 in the reserve, and it stays capped at that for if you've got 3 reserve mods. So that's a tremendous amount of mag size for this weapon. I think it benefits Precision Instrument because I think Briar's Contempt just gets a slight edge over when it comes to Surrounded. Both can get crafted Surrounded, Enhanced Surrounded, I should say, which is a 47% increased damage for enemies that are lingering, and for 1.5 seconds after that. So 3 enemies within 8 meters. There's been a lot of active encounters that have kind of promoted that. We already mentioned Crota. We've mentioned Warlord's Ruin as well. So these weapons are kind of really exploiting that Surrounded edge. But I think I've had a lot more, because I've already got a Briar's Contempt. I suppose this is a little bit more kind of subjective commentary. I don't necessarily need to have this as an enhanced Surrounded role. It's a different element, which is, if you're pairing it with Surge mods and your individual class elements. But if you don't have Briar's Contempt, it's not it's the second recent raid, but I know folks probably won't be necessarily running a lot unless it's the featured raid. But for me, Precision Instrument. But if you have this, get that Enhanced Crafted Surrounded, because it kicks like, or I should say, in terms of damage, it kicks like a mule. It's really solid, a really great damage weapon here. And you could pair it with Scatter Signal, because that's in the other column. If you've got very long damage phases, that is.
I was gonna say, yeah, 18 shots on an LFR through. If you're not done with the damage phase, you must be. There's very few encounters that have that long of a damage phase.
18 for the fusion and 18 for the linear.
Yeah, holy moly.
I've talked enough though. Impetus, outside of that damage roll, would you suggest anything else? If you kind of caught anything, have you been using this a lot?
I've been using it a good bit here. Yeah, I went with Precision Instrument on mine. Again, don't run Ionized Battery. Do not worry when you watch the reload speed drop to 4, right? That's the whole point of running Envious Assassin is you're not supposed to manually reload this. If you are in a damaged environment where you do use up all 18 of those shots, swap to your special weapon. Start using that. And then once the damage phase is over, because trust me, it will not be going on much longer after that point, you go back to doing whatever it is you need to do to get back into the damage phase, get those kills with your primary, your special, your, stuff like that. And then you'll start building up whatever ammo you're able to get back into this LFR through Envious Assassin. And yeah, again, you don't need to worry about manually reloading. I think that's kind of something that a lot of people struggle with Envious Assassin is you're just supposed to stop reloading whatever weapon you have Envious Assassin on because you're getting past the point, you're ignoring the perk. And as such, you end up kind of ignoring an entire column and you're just ending up with a blue weapon at that point where you've only got one extra perk beyond your battery and your magazine. Don't reload with Envious. If you'd rather have Reconstruction, definitely don't reload then because that's going to be doing the reloading for you. But Envious is the top tier option. Ionized is the best pairing. And then go to town with Precision Instrument. Sit back and enjoy the show, I guess, because it's a very simple, straightforward damage strategy once you have all those bullets lined up.
Well, Envious Assassin has that kind of minigame. It has the reward because you can really play into having a stacked magazine, as I've already mentioned, up to 18. And yeah, to your point there, Impetus, about you shouldn't be reloading with this, and you can trigger the effects of Envious pretty much any time. You're using your other weapons to effectively reload this one, so you shouldn't manually reload that. 4 reload speed doesn't matter when it comes to Doom Petitioner. But if you're brand new to the game, if you don't raid a lot, then this is your go-to. I don't want to sound like I'm dismissing this. I don't think I have been, but when it comes to if you already have a Briar's Contempt with Surrounded, then I would maybe pick out Precision Instrument when it comes to a lot of activities, because Surrounded can be very, it's very high risk but also high reward. Especially with that 47% damage increase. That's, to put it in perspective, it's the same, pretty much almost the same damage increase that Golden Tricorn gets, which is a little bit more of a kind of hoop jumping in terms of actually activating it, but it's highly risky. Surrounded. Precision Instruments, your standard go-to if you're not that enthused, if you don't feel like you're getting the Surrounded to proc off. Then that's your go-to. But as we've already mentioned, there's just a lot of activities recently, a lot of encounters recently that kind of promote that playstyle for Surrounded. And my brain keeps going back to both the final 2 encounters for Crota's End and also, all 3 of the encounters in Warlord's Ruin. So that's our recent activities that kind of play into Surrounded, but can get along with Precision Instrument just well too.
I agree. Yeah. Solid heavy weapon. I didn't, after the dominant trio of special weapons for this season, we did get to go out on a bang with a pretty solid heavy weapon as well. So season of the Wish, our final seasonal batch, 2 thumbs up for me. I don't know how you feel about the total set here, Court, but I think we went out on a pretty high note here.
Yeah, outside of Lethophobia, pretty much solid weapons. I know we don't tend to be quite enthused when it comes to shotguns, especially pinpoint slug frames, but even that has potential if you can use the threat detector, surrounded roll, or 4 times the charm, vorpal weapon, then it's there. If you like shotguns, it's there. But the rest are, scatter signal just came out of nowhere to be to be such a the kingmaker compared to. It's the battle of the giants when it comes to the fusion rifles. You've got scatter signal plus the Eremite from last season, and this season we have Doom Petitioner, and from Ron you've got Briar's Contempt. So there's a lot of competitive options, but as we keep kind of mentioning, if you're not that kind of great, you haven't done a lot of raids, you don't have some of the kind of top tier weapons, doesn't necessarily matter. We do have some really solid picks through the seasons, and I think at least the last couple of seasons, this has to be some of the most kind of impressive out of the 6, 12, 18, 24 that we've had since Lightfall launched.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, well that is it for our first episode of 2024. That's episode 92. We do want to thank everyone who supported us in 2023, and of course our lovely patrons and sponsors for keeping the lights on. We of course want to thank our audio engineer Autodidaktos. A relatively short episode from this week. Next week, Saint will be back and we'll be a trio once more. I think we'll be breaking down some of the playlists and the world loot weapons. But until then, my name is Court. You can find me over on the social websites as Court Projects. You can find my spreadsheets and infographics over on my my link tree, as well as the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Linktree Destiny spreadsheets. You can find a lot of other applications and spreadsheets to enhance your Destiny experience over there as well. A really great list there. If you really want to know a lot of the nitty gritty stuff, go and have a look at the Linktree, and of course over on our Discord server as well. Impetus.
My name is Impetus. You can find me by that name in Discord and in Destiny. I'll be running around doing a bunch of different activities, doing some coil, hopefully by myself now that togetherness modifier is being removed, but certainly doing the GMs now that the rotator will be up next week. So I will see you out and about, and of course we will see you as a full fire team next week. Have a good one.